Good afternoon. We're going to get ready and start this most important meeting. My name is the Reverend Tommy Pearson, and I pastor the Greater St. Mark Family Church. I want to welcome each of you here today, and I want to thank the commission members for their willingness to serve this community at such an important time. There's a scripture that in Matthew chapter 25, around the 31st verse, talk about separating. When the king comes, he'll separate the good from the bad, if you will. And he'll say to the good, when I was hungry, you fed me. When I was thirsty, you gave me something to drink. And when I was naked, you clothed me. Outdoors, you took me in prison, you came to see me. And those folk asked the question, when did we see you in those conditions and met your needs? And he shared with them that when you did it to the least of these, you did it unto me. God has a requirement. And that requirement is found in Micah chapter 6, verse 8. B part of that verse says, what doeth God require of us but to love mercy and to do justly and to walk humbly before our God? And so today we're challenged to live out the requirements of God. And that is how we treat the least among us. And when you look at that, it was amazing to me why they would ask the question if they were doing all of these things. When did you see me do it? And I believe it was because they were doing what was normal. And when we do what is normal, we pay little attention to it. We just do it. And so I challenge all of us, this commission in particular, to do that which is normal, and that is to love and understand and treat our fellow man in the way that we would want to be treated. So I think that is a challenge today, and let me offer a prayer for this commission and for you as we move forward in this crucial time. Eternal God, our Father, we come at this hour and we come with thanksgiving on our hearts. We thank you for people who are willing to serve, and they do it because it is normal for them. It's not a stretch, it's not a struggle, but it is what is normal. And so we pray for their strength, their encouragement. We pray that you will guide them in their deliberation, that when it is all over, that the community and them will be the better for it. So we thank you now. It is in your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
At this time, we're going to bring up we'll turn it over to Pastor Starsky Wilson.
Thank you very much. We thank Pastor Pearson for his leadership in the community as both an elected official here locally and also his service at Greater St. Mark Church, which has been a location of great solace and support to those who have been engaged in this wider conversation here in our community. So thank you very much, Pastor Pearson, for your leadership on today. Our task now is to officially open and call to order this first meeting of the Ferguson Commission, and we do so with just a few opening remarks, and I think appropriately with the opening from Pastor Pearson. He has reminded us, as we are reminded by those of our friends from across the nation, that there are other eyes upon our work. We honor the eyes that are upon our work, beginning with those that Pastor Pearson reminds us of, that the eyes of God, that we stand here, we sit here today under the gaze of eternity and under the gaze of God, to do work toward reconciliation and healing. That is a work that is required for our community and for all communities. We also recognize that the eyes of the world are upon our work. On Friday, the United Nations Committee Against Torture criticized our country for a pattern of police brutality and excessive force against racial and ethnic minorities. So inasmuch as we are called to focus on citizen and law enforcement relations, we know that the eyes of the world are on our work. We're reminded that the eyes of the nation are also on our work. Today, we are without two of our commissioners because the White House schedule is dominated today by conversations with civil rights leaders, law enforcement leaders, and community members, including Rasheen Aldridge, the leader and director of Young Activists United, and Brittany Packnett, the executive director of Teach for America St. Louis. They are there to inform the discussions in Washington, D.C. We will be engaged with them by video recording, and if we can get technology to work appropriately, then by their live voices as well. But more than anything else, the eyes of our region, our neighbors, our friends, our families, our church members are upon us, because our work will affect their life outcomes first and foremost. It will impact their lives as it impacts each and every one of ours. And so we honor the eyes that are upon us, but we need the ears, the hearts, the voices of this community to be successful. And so in order to get our ears, our hearts, and our voices focused, we ask a few things of ground rules along the way and for the way ahead. We ask of ourselves and of all of those who are tuned into our work to maintain an open mind, to ask questions and encourage others to share their experiences and insights in as much as we share our own, to be willing to share ideas and airtime we will share with one another. We invite you to share with us, and to respect all views and opinions as valid, as they come from the perspectives of others who are made in the image and likeness of God. We also say that there are some signposts for our work. Signposts that will need to guide us and, quite frankly, have guided the partnership between Rich and I for some time. We ask at the announcement, and we continue to ask all of those who are tuned in with your eyes, your ears, and your hearts to pray for us. Pray for the work that we have to do, because it is transcendent work of health, of healing, and of reconciliation. It will require greater powers than ours. We also ask that you hold us accountable. We are a group of citizens engaged in a project of inclusive democracy, and that requires accountability for those who have been appointed, those who have been chosen, those who have been elected. And as a body of such, we invite you to hold us accountable. And we let you know, we commit that there will always be opportunity for your community voice, for the community's voice in our work. And so we invite you to participate in the process, to engage in the discussion, to give the best of yourselves to this work, because it will take all of us. Finally, we recognize that we are entering into a conversation that has been ongoing for many years. With that and great respect for the wisdom of the community in mind, we want to invite you to continually engage in this process and in dialogue. And I want to give some specific ways to do that. First of all, many of us have already received phone calls, emails, text messages, tweets, sharing with us ideas and perspectives about the way we should go about our work. We appreciate all of that. I want to officially now ask and make a request that you email us reports, research, reform recommendations that you think will be helpful to our work. There's lots of data out there. We've got heavy lifting to do, and that means we've got some sifting to do. But if you are close to a resource that would be helpful for the commission's work, we invite you to email us at contact@stlpositivechange.org. contact@stlpositivechange.org with the best of research, reform recommendations, or reports that you believe should inform our thinking, our discussions in this work. We commit our best to you, the best of ourselves. We will not get it all right all the time for everyone, but we commit that we will give our best. I now turn the floor over to my co-chair and friend, Mr. Rich McClure.
Thank you, Starsky, and I want to add my thanks to all of you for being here today. This is the first meeting of the Commission. It comes very quickly after the announcement of the Commission. So we thank you for your patience as we have developed an agenda here. We're working our way through processes that we think will be helpful, and we ask for your understanding and patience and support. We want to thank Ferguson and the folks at the Community Center here for hosting us today and for reacting on short notice to allow us to be here. I also want to add my thanks to Representative and Pastor Pearson for being here to open our meeting so effectively. I want to welcome my fellow commissioners. Starsky, as appropriate, addressed his comments to the community and to our audience at large as we agreed to divide up our work here. But I want to thank our commissioners for their willingness to serve. We're glad you're here. All of us who have the privilege of serving in this important work are grateful for the support of so many in our region. They have expressed their hopes for this journey, and those hopes have come from those in law enforcement who've been on the front lines, and they've come from those that have been in the protest movement and been on the front lines. They've come from people in our region who have been thoughtful and prayerful observers of this process, and they have come from folks who very, very deeply care about what happens in our region. And so for all of those folks and all of those voices and the service of all of those people, we express our gratitude and our thanks. In recent weeks, the tragic events here in Ferguson, they've shown a spotlight on the very significant challenges that we have in our region. And all of us, in our own ways, have taken actions and have been praying for peace and for justice and for mercy and for grace to be in this process. We've also been praying that the long and arduous path to reconciliation will be paved with the changes that we know we must undertake as a community. So we as a commission, and certainly we as leaders, are committed to lasting positive change for St. Louis, and together we have to work through that process with truthful conversations about systemic racism, about persistent poverty, about educational inequality, about law enforcement and their needs, and about community police relationships, and about our court system. And there's a chasm in our community that we need to begin to work to find ways to build bridges across. We know this isn't just about Ferguson. We know that there are deep problems exposed here, but they are region-wide, they are nationwide, and they are not ours alone, but they are national in scope. Witnesses the meetings that are occurring in Washington today. I have to pause here and say how incredibly thankful I am that I have the chance to partner in this work with my friend Starsky. We've had the chance to serve together working on the cause of educational inequality. And so when the opportunity came to work with him, it was a key part of my decision to participate and be a part of this, because we not only share this deep commitment to our community and a passion that things can and should be better, but we share a common foundation in our faith and realize that we want every citizen in our region to reach the maximum of the potential that God gave them. And to do that, we need to embark upon this effort in a very serious and a very thoughtful and intentional way. Let me just say a few things to my fellow commissioners here. We are all here, I believe, because we concluded we could not sit on the sidelines. You are all accomplished leaders in your own right and in your own spheres of influence. And we come from many different perspectives and from diverse opinions. But we know that the foundation of our region fundamentally is strong, but it has been shaken. So now we embark upon that road. We embark upon the road to address the underlying causes of the complex and difficult issues in a very serious way that demands action. So we're going to work to tackle these issues in a way that doesn't take sides, that doesn't place blame for misunderstanding or for anger or for hurt or for fear. Because everyone is a part of our region, and it is everyone's problem. And until each and every one of us assumes accountability for the role we play, be it large or small, we will continue to be victims, perhaps in different ways. But we know that solutions can be found, and we cannot expect others to change if we remain the same. So during this meeting, we're going to have opportunities to hear from each of the commissioners, and then together we're going to develop principles that will guide our work. We know that public meetings of this size and with audiences are new to some of us, so we encourage everyone to participate and to focus on the topics at hand. So as Starsky and I have thought about the Commission's work since the announcement, we know there are clearly recommendations in spaces that we can begin to process more quickly than others. And we will move on them quickly, and we'll work here today perhaps to identify some of those. And so let me just very quickly identify some processes that will help our work. The first is we will engage advisory groups, folks in the community, folks of expertise in a particular area, to help inform us and to help give us their thoughts that will help shape our recommendations. We will involve a very serious outreach and community engagement effort that is part of that advisory effort. Starsky mentioned the website and social media as a way for folks to engage with our community. We will work to educate ourselves and to educate our community about what we can learn from existing research and from things that have been learned in the past, mistakes that have been made in the past. Toward that end, we have provided to the Commission, and we will post on our website today, a report entitled Background Report, Analysis and Response to Urban Civil Disorder, prepared for the Commission at our request, and so that will be available to the public. It's been available to the Commission as well. And we will work to find innovative ways to communicate with larger audiences and to make sure that we are listening carefully. So you've already all made a significant commitment of time and of energy, so we're going to ask much more of that between now and September, but we could not be more grateful to be serving with you. So as we get to know each other better, we'll find common ground in ways that we never thought possible. And through that, I believe that we'll find ways to be a part of the positive change in a way that this region never thought possible. So thank you. So we're going to shift now and ask Rebecca Bennett, who's our meeting facilitator, to come to the podium, and she's going to describe a little bit about the agenda of the meeting and some of the meeting outcomes, and then we'll return to some administrative matters. Rebecca, thank you.
Thank you, Rich. Good afternoon, commissioners. Good afternoon, community. I am thrilled and delighted to be with you today. At this point in time, we get the opportunity to articulate what it is that we will be accomplishing over the next 5 hours. So this meeting really is framed in 3 distinct buckets, distinct though interrelated. One, it is an opportunity for commissioners to get to know each other, to know your motivations. Why have you answered the call to serve? What are your hopes and aspirations for this commission and for our community? So we'll spend some time doing that and listening to you, having you listen to each other for insight, for motivation, for what's at the heart of why you're here. We'll switch from that, and as you heard Rich allude to, we'll be doing some guiding principles work. And so we'll be asking you, what are the guiding principles, values, and commitments that really need to focus all of our internal operations, all of our decision-making, and ultimately, of course, also our community engagement. So these are the commitments that we will live by and that we are publicly announcing and sharing so that, again, our community can help hold us accountable for living them fully, brilliantly, and completely. The third part of what we will do today, later on this afternoon, is to really have a conversation about community priorities. And that's the point at which we will open up the discussion so that we move from being commissioner-focused to being community-focused. All of you who have joined us today and who went through registration got an opportunity to receive 2 Post-it notes, one that was yellow and one that was pink. We ask that you also share your hopes for the commission, and so on the yellow Post-it, we ask that you write whatever your hopes are for the commission and for its work. And on the pink Post-it, we ask for you to identify your concerns. What concerns do you have about the commission, about its process, possibly about its work, so that we can know what your hopes and concerns are at the very beginning of our work, and be mindful and considerate of them and seek to address them in as proactive a manner as possible. You'll see that there are two boards, one that says hopes, one that says concerns, and we'll certainly ask that you post your comments there. In that community priorities discussion, we will get a chance to review your hopes and concerns, but we will also ask you to share us a little bit about yourselves. We'll give you keypads, and we'll do keypad polling so that we can get real-time input from our community participants today. We'll ask you to tell us a little bit of information about yourselves, and then we will ask you to take a look at the 12 areas of focus that were articulated in the executive order, and to help us get a sense of priority to you. And once you do that through this keypad polling process, we will go around, we'll have the mic open, and for each of the top priority areas, we'll ask you to identify specifically your issues of concern. If we do not get a chance to call on you, have no fear. You have green sheets, so you will be given green sheets, and we will ask for those of you who do not get a chance to comment via the microphone that you complete these sheets, and we'll post them also on the wall for all to review and be able to tour. Our promise is that all of the input that comes out of this session will be turned into a summary report that is shared with the commission so that the commission can be mindful of the input, and that is also posted electronically for others to be able to view at will. So that's really going to be our day today, and those 5 hours will go by fairly quickly. We'll have 2 breaks so that you get a chance to stretch and to think of other things, and then bring your attention back to the group. So that's our work today, and it is a good place to begin because we have to start somewhere. Having said that, I'm going to turn the microphone back over to Rich so that we can begin the administrative portion of our meeting.
Thank you very much, Rebecca, and we welcome the participation in the ways which you identified. I would like to now introduce Assistant Attorney General Patricia Churchill. She is here to provide a briefing for the Commission and information for the audience on the state's Sunshine Law and open meetings requirements. She is Chief of the Governmental Affairs Unit in the Attorney General's Office. And Patricia, thank you for being here today.
Thank you. Reverend Wilson and Mr. McClure and members of the Commission, I really appreciate the invitation to be here. As Chairman McClure mentioned, I'm Patricia Churchill, and I'm an Assistant Attorney General in the Attorney General's Office for the state of Missouri. And in my role, I regularly deal with sunshine law. So what I'd like to do today is give you an overview of the law, an introduction for those of you who have not had the pleasure of dealing with it in the past. First of all, the Sunshine Law is divided into 2 primary parts: open meetings and open records. There's a presumption in Missouri law that meetings and records of public governmental bodies like the Ferguson Commission are open. Meetings and records of public governmental bodies are open unless they fall within one of the exceptions that's listed in the Sunshine Law that would allow information like a record or a meeting to be closed. In fact, Missouri law includes a directive that the Sunshine Law shall be liberally construed and the exceptions strictly construed to promote this public policy of openness. So if you're faced with a situation where you feel like it's a tie between should this be open or should be closed, the law would tell us to err on the side of openness. And my remarks today are really intended to be an overview of the general requirements, and it won't offer you specific legal advice to specific questions. But I'll first address the need for establishing a Sunshine Law policy for the Ferguson Commission, and then talk a little bit about meetings requirements and records requirements, and finally at the end just talk about some of those exceptions that I mentioned that allow you to close records when it's appropriate. The first thing I wanted to mention is the need for a Sunshine Law policy. There is an obligation that every governmental body, like the Ferguson Commission, have a written Sunshine Law policy. You must also appoint a custodian of records, and that's who the person, a member of the public, would go to ask for records. The Missouri Attorney General's Office has a Sunshine Law booklet. I have copies for the Commission. If they would like, I will leave them with one of your assistants. But this Sunshine Law booklet actually has a sample policy. So you can use that to help you get started, review it with one of your attorney members of the commission, or if you retain an attorney, they can kind of help you decide what sort of policy you need. To talk about meetings like the one we're having today, a meeting occurs whenever there's a quorum of your body that is discussing public business. So for the Ferguson Commission, whenever there are 9 members discussing public business, and that's either in person, on the telephone, or a web conference, that's a public meeting for purposes of the Sunshine Law. Also, I'd point out that in the event the commission decides to appoint committees, subcommittees, or advisory committees for the specific purpose of recommending policies or policy revisions to the full commission, those committees are also public governmental bodies. They're smaller public governmental bodies. And it's the obligation of the commission's custodian of records to keep a list of those committees that you appoint. And they will have that obligation to post their meetings in the same way that the larger commission posts its meetings. It's also not uncommon to have people on telephone conference or video conference. If you do that, you still have, so for example, if all of you were meeting by video conference or telephone conference, it's still your obligation to provide the public with a way to attend that meeting. The Sunshine Law doesn't provide us with specific guidance about how you accomplish that, but in my observation, it's very common to post the meeting, notice, and tell people how they can attend by coming to your place of business, your main office, or your main public meeting place, and there they would be able to sit, listen to the telephone conference over the speakerphone, or watch it on a video screen. So just kind of giving them that same opportunity to attend as you would have. The definition of a public meeting also includes a vote by electronic communication. If by chance you take a vote by email, that's a meeting, and you would have to notice that up, that you are taking a vote by email. The Sunshine Law also talks about the venue for a meeting. So when you select a location for your meeting, the Sunshine Law requires you to hold it in a location that you think will be of sufficient size to accommodate the number of people you expect to attend. The law, not surprisingly, requires you to make reasonable efforts to grant special access to people with disabilities. When you're going to have a meeting, and you guys accomplish this with flying colors, you post your meeting in advance. Every meeting requires 24 hours notice, not including weekends or holidays. If it is an open meeting, the agenda must also be posted with the notice. It's a tentative agenda that needs to tell the public reasonably so they can know what matters you're going to discuss. You would post the notice at your main office if you have one. If you don't have a main office yet, you would post it at the location that the meeting is going to be held. Also, the Sunshine Law requires that if there are members of the media who have asked for advance notice of meetings, you're required to give them notice at the same time that the members of the commission get notice. There's an additional requirement if you are going to hold a closed meeting. A closed meeting requires a roll call vote of a majority of a quorum of the commission. You must also cite the very specific section that you're relying on to close the meeting. We'll talk about some of those exceptions in just a minute. If you have an attorney member or if you've retained an attorney, it can be helpful to give that tentative closed agenda to that attorney. Take a look at that. Make sure that your motion includes the proper section that you need to cite to rely on to close your meeting. And when you're closing a meeting, you should only close that portion of the facility necessary to house the members of the commission and let the public stay in the public portion of the meeting so that if you come back out from a closed session, the public is there to participate in that public portion of the meeting. Ideally, the commission might be able to retire to a smaller room where you would conduct your closed business and then return to the public portion for the open portion of the meeting. Recording meetings. The commission must allow for audio and video recording of meetings. You may, however, establish some guidelines that will help you minimize disruption to the meeting itself. The law, again, doesn't provide us with specific examples of guidelines or the permissible guidelines, so you might want to talk to an attorney if you're looking at establishing formal guidelines. One possible example I could think of is designating certain areas for cameras or microphones that'll help people get a good line of sight or recording, but also if they have to adjust that equipment during the middle of the meeting, it won't disrupt the speakers or the business of the commission. I would point out, recording a closed meeting is very different. Recording a closed meeting without the permission of the entire body is a C misdemeanor. So for the commission to give its permission would likely require a vote of the commission. Any vote in a closed session would be a roll call vote. So if there's going to be a recording in a closed session, it would be with the permission of the members. Minutes. Every meeting, closed or open, requires minutes. The Sunshine Law requires just a minimum of date, time, place, members present, members absent, and a record of any votes taken. If someone abstains, that should be noted too. If there's a roll call vote, you would attribute the yay or the nay to each individual member. I would mention just an area of caution for closed meetings. It can be really easy to drift into something that wasn't a topic originally for the closed meeting. You might be, for example, having a closed session to decide to hire a staff person and be discussing the individual qualifications of the applicants. And part of that, it might drift over into talking about maybe budget. And that's where I think members can be alert to things that weren't part of the closed session or that are more appropriate for open and help one another out. If you hear that, it would be perfectly fine to say something simple like, I think that's something that we might more appropriately address in open, and ask the secretary to put that on your agenda for your next open session. There's one other item that is kind of a technical requirement. If there are 9 members of the commission, talking about the full commission, one member is emailing at least 8 other members, so there's 9 of you on the email. The Sunshine Law requires you the sending member to copy the custodian of records or to copy their official office computer if they were to have one for the commission. That would hold true for one of the advisory committees too. So if it's a 5-member advisory committee and there are 3 of you on the email, it sort of mimics the public's ability to see a quorum's discussion. If you're having a discussion of a quorum on email, then that'll at least be in the public record and allow the public to have access to that discussion. Which sort of leads us to records. The definition of record is very broad. It includes any record, whether written or electronically stored, retained by or of the commission. It includes also documents prepared for you by a consultant or by a professional service that's paid for even in part by public funds. It includes records created or maintained by private contractors on behalf of the commission. So paper documents, email records, electronic files are all records under the Sunshine Law. There are specific timing requirements that some of you may be familiar with when you're responding to a records request. Once the custodian receives the request, they have 3 days to provide a response. It may not always be possible to provide the actual records during those 3 days, but you still have to respond to the requester within those 3 days and say, the records aren't immediately available because maybe you're still looking for them, maybe they're old records, maybe not in the case of this commission, but you're still looking for the records, and you have to provide them with your best estimate of the earliest date and time you think those records will be available. The Sunshine Law doesn't tell us what to do if you get to that time and they're not available, but I think a best practice would be to keep the lines of communication open with the requester to say, I'm touching base with you, it looks like it's going to be another 2 days. If a person requests the record in electronic form, you're required to give it that way. So if you have an Excel spreadsheet that contains data and information that you can sort and, with yourself, and they want it in that electronic format, and you're able to do it, you have to give it to them in that electronic format, not just a printout. Also, the Sunshine Law requires that when you're designing records, you should design them in a way that helps easily separate closed from open information. If you do it now, it will be less time consuming for you in the long run, and it will also make access to the records less costly later. If a record contains open and closed information, that doesn't mean you can just withhold the entire record. You must redact or mark out and recopy that document and provide the open information to the requester. So for example, if a document contained a social security number, then that's something you can close under the law. You would mark that out, copy it, and provide the rest of the document to the requester. You're also required to give the requester an idea of what you redacted. In that situation, it's pretty simple. You redacted an individual's social security number. Generally speaking, if you close any portion of a records response to a records request, if the requester asks you for it, you're required to give them an explanation of why you closed it, citing the specific section that you relied on to close that record. So your custodian will have to be very familiar with those exceptions in order to cite the accurate sections in their response. When you respond to records, you're also allowed to recoup some of the costs associated with responding to records requests. There are limitations, however, on what you can charge. For example, for copying, you have to limit it to the lowest clerical staff member who can perform the copying work. There are lots of details about costs for search, research, and duplication. I won't go into those nitty-gritty details, but that is, again, something that your custodian would have to be very familiar with in order to respond to records requests. I would mention, too, just a couple of points about sunshine requests. Nothing in the sunshine law says that the requester has to invoke the sunshine law. A lot of times they do. They'll say, I am making a sunshine law request, which is helpful because it alerts you to it, but they're not required to. And technically, a sunshine law request isn't required to be in writing. Again, I think for a requester and for the body, it's helpful to make your request in writing so that everybody has a clear understanding of what was being requested. But it's important that your staff people know if they receive a request, what they should do with it, direct it to the custodian. If you as members receive a request for records, you should know to direct that person to the custodian so that they can properly make their request of the custodian of records. Just to talk a little bit about the exemptions that allow you to close portions of meetings. There are more than 20 that are listed in the Sunshine Law itself. They're all in the booklet. There's also the possibility there could be outside laws, like HIPAA. People are familiar if by chance you had protected health care information. That's another law that's outside the Sunshine Law, but that would allow you to close records. But I'm going to go over just some of the common ones that might most likely apply to you. You can close records that relate to meetings. You can close records and meetings if you're receiving legal advice from your attorney. If there's privileged communications with your attorney, that can be closed. If you were to enter into a lease for office space and you needed to discuss the different options in private, because if everybody knew which lease properties you were looking at, it might detrimentally affect your transaction, you can close that meeting to discuss the lease. However, as soon as you execute your lease, the records about your discussion and your vote would be open to the public. Competitive bid specifications, negotiating a contract. Again, similarly, if in those situations you can close until the bid is posted, the bid specs are final and they're posted, or the negotiated contract is executed. And once that happens, all of those records are open. You can close meetings when you discuss individually identifiable personnel records, if you're talking about an employee's performance. But if you have employees, their names, salaries, positions, and length of service are all public record. I would mention that as members of the commission, you're not generally considered an employee, so you wouldn't discuss each other necessarily in a closed session outside some other circumstance. Those are some of the most likely utilized exceptions that I can see for you all. I hope that that's helpful to you, and as I mentioned, I have everything I covered today is in this booklet, and I'll leave it for you. Again, I thank you so much for having me, and I think that including the Sunshine Law in your first agenda sets the right tone for the important work that you all have ahead of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Churchill. I wanted to offer the commissioners an opportunity if they had questions, more specific questions about Sunshine Law, to ask you at this time.
Well, I'll be available.
I will just real briefly, you mentioned a sunshine law policy and that each governmental unit should have one, is recommended to have one. Do you have a model policy that you could share with us, or is there one in the book?
We do. It's on page 54. And the important thing is that you look to see which exemptions you think that the commission will be availing itself of. Because the sunshine law says, for the most part, you may close records. You're not required to. So you would have to look at that and decide which records that you think are something you'll need to close.
Good, thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
In terms of appointing a custodian of records, would that be a commissioner or an employee?
That's a good question. I think sometimes it is often a commissioner who would be the custodian, but you might very well have a staff person who is helping you execute some of the searches, gathering the documents. But in the end, I will have to tell you, though, the law isn't specific. It doesn't specifically mention if it has to be an employee or a member. Okay?
Thank you very much. Looks like there are no further questions. Thank you for your service.
We have just a couple of other administrative matters for the commission. First of all, we are contemplating several additional meetings in December. We're working to finalize those dates and locations, and we'll get those to the commission and post them publicly under the requirements of the law, just as we did this particular meeting. But we do expect to be working very hard during December to get our commission work underway. Secondly, as you know, we have administrative support staff available to you, and they can be reached through the commission phone number and the commission email address as well that is posted to the public. There's another item of business that we need to ask the commission to consider. We need a fiscal agent to handle the funds available to the commission. As you know, there are already several sources of funding coming from state entities that have been made available, passing resolutions. So we need an entity to receive those funds, to provide the reporting and audit trail and dual controls, all the appropriate processes. The St. Louis United Way has agreed to be our fiscal agent, and we need to have the authority to enter into a memorandum of understanding with the St. Louis United Way to serve as fiscal agent for funds intended by the Youth Commission, provide the reporting necessary. In addition, we will need an agent to serve as our Human Resources and Payroll Services Manager. Here again, the St. Louis United Way has agreed to do that, and they will provide management of our human resources process and any employees that the Commission has in payroll services, and that would be part of our memorandum of understanding with them as well. And then third, we need to hire a commission staff director who in turn will begin putting a staff together. Starsky and I have begun to think about that process and to work through what that might look like in terms of requirements and job descriptions, things like that. And so we would ask that the commission delegate to us the authority to hire that staff director. We welcome any input that you might have in that process, both in terms of skills and profile or individual names, and certainly we pledge to consider that, and we pledge to report back at subsequent meetings on our progress and approach to this. And so these have been prepared in a written motion, which you all have in front of you at the commission table. We have extra copies for any members of the press, limited copies for the public if they would like to see them, but the motion basically says what I just said. It delegates the authority for those three actions. So Allison or Angela have those extra copies if you would need them. At this stage, I'll turn it over to Starsky to manage any discussion or questions around this motion.
So to the commissioners, is there any further discussion you have, questions about conversation to this point or about the motion itself? Seeing none, the floor is open for action on the motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd move adoption.
It's been moved and properly seconded that the motion as presented be passed. I'll just read clearly the motion so everyone has the language. So this motion comes from Mr. Carr. I hereby move that the Ferguson Commission co-chairs be delegated the authority to take the following actions in furtherance of continuing the initial work of the commission. Number one, enter into a memorandum of understanding with the St. Louis United Way to serve as the commission's fiscal agent for any funds intended for use by the commission in carrying out its work. Number two, enter into a memorandum of understanding with the St. Louis United Way to provide human resources and payroll services for the commission staff. Number three, hire a commission staff director who shall be authorized to hire additional staff as necessary and proper to support the commission's work, provided that the co-chairs report at subsequent commission meetings as to the results of the above described efforts. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion as presented and read, please notify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries. I believe this concludes the administrative portion of our agenda. Any other questions regarding the administration of the commission's work? Seeing none, we'll invite Ms. Rebecca Bennett, our meeting facilitator, to rejoin us for our culture building portion of the agenda. We'll have opportunity to hear from each of the commissioners.
So commissioners, this is the portion of the meeting when we get to hear about why you have answered the call to serve. I'd like you to imagine that you were being asked to make an elevator speech, let's say going from floor 1 to floor 10. And in that span of time, you have to explain why you said yes to this particular task, recognizing all of the challenges and the weight that this task presents. We'd like to hear you talk about why you're here today and why you have committed for the next 10 or 11 months or so. So we will actually open up the floor from our two commissioners who have been called away.
My name is Rasheen Aldridge. I'm 20 years old. I'm a student at Forest Park Community College. I felt called to serve on the Ferguson Commission after the tragedy of Mike Brown. Governor Nixon called that he wanted to put a commission together. And I was very hesitant at first, even if I wanted to serve on this commission, especially because how the young folks had felt on a lot of decisions that was made during this whole Ferguson movement. But after talking to the young people on the ground and some mentors, they had told me that they think this would not only be good for me, but especially good for the young folks. And I felt like I think I would be a great asset to this Ferguson Commission because being out there in Ferguson since day one and building those relationships with the young people and being out there organizing and putting on actions together, I feel like I got a clear understanding on what we want. Of course, I'll never be the voice of all young folks, but I do feel like I can help provide concerns and issues that the young people have in the community of Ferguson and the whole St. Louis region. Hopefully I can provide those issues and concerns to the commission and we can get some real systematic change out of this. And we can, the young people can feel like that their lives matter and the young people can one day feel like that, once they walk up and down these streets that they're not harassed and that they're not targeted every single day just stepping outside their community and being at the table to provide these issues and concerns so we can get some real change out of this. We're tired of the same old talks. We're tired of just this is going to happen, that's going to happen. We're tired of seeing our lives on the ground, so we want change, and hopefully I can provide that insight from the young folks and bring that to the commission.
I'm Brittany Packnett. I felt called to serve on the Ferguson Commission for a whole host of reasons, but the primary ones are home, equity, and children. This is my home. I am a native of North St. Louis County. I love North St. Louis County. I love all of St. Louis. And I am committed to excellence and equity for all of the people of our region. There is no zip code, no race, no background that should determine any of our outcomes. And so in order to make sure that that happens, I need to play my part and make my contribution. I also want to make sure that I'm making my contribution for the equity of our children. All of our children should be able to live in a just world where they can be developed as leaders and they can have their dignity truly preserved and uplifted as young people of value, every single one of them. As an educator and someone who works in the education arena, I can't stand up for children inside of the classroom if I'm not willing to stand up for them outside of the classroom. We educate our students in the context of their community. And if they are not feeling whole, loved, and valued outside of the schoolhouse, then I have a role to play in that. And so that's why I'm glad to be a member of the Ferguson Commission, to be accountable to the community, and to make sure that the voice of the people is truly heard.
Fellow commissioners, are there others of you who would like to speak at this time?
Well, I'll step up. I'm Scott Negwer. I was born and raised in Ferguson. My family has been very blessed, and it was my neighbors in Ferguson, my business neighbors, my, well, I'll say co-workers who live in Ferguson, and the many people I see every day in Ferguson who are affected by this. And I have been very blessed, as I mentioned earlier, and that's what people do. When you're blessed, you give back. You know, I view this as neighbors helping neighbors. We need to make Ferguson a better place for all the citizens of Ferguson, not just the west side or the south side or the north side. It's all the citizens of Ferguson.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll go next.
Yes.
I'm Grayling Tobias. My current role is superintendent of the Hazelwood School District. This is an extension of my work as superintendent. It is also personal. I am a product of the Ferguson-Florissant School District. I went to McClure High School, grew up in North St. Louis, and have worked the majority of my educational career in North County. This is about making a difference not only in Ferguson, but also in the St. Louis region, in the entire state, and hopefully nationwide. These issues have, being a native St. Louisan, you know, these issues have been around for a long, long time. And as I drove up to this meeting today, I drove through an area that in high school I probably would not have driven through at night. And so it's really personal. I want to be part of making a difference, not only in the city of Ferguson, but also the entire St. Louis area. As part of my role as an educator, I also served as a middle school principal in the Riverview Garden School District, and I also served as an educator in the Parkway School District. In addition to that, I served as a teacher at a private school, St. Louis Country Day School. It's now Mary Institute Country Day. And so I would hope that I could bring to the commission a wide variety of experiences as a native St. Louisan. Also, I serve on multiple boards. I'm on the executive board of North County Incorporated, the Greater St. Louis, or the Greater North County Chamber of Commerce, and the TEAM Pantry. And TEAM stands for the Emergency Assistance Ministry in Florissant. And so I'm committed. I'm committed to the work. I'm looking forward to the challenge. I think it's an extension of my work as an educator, but it's far bigger than that, and so that's why I'm here.
Thank you.
I chose to serve on the commission, to ask to be appointed, because I'm a lifelong resident of North County. My wife and I both graduated from the Ferguson-Florissant school system. My wife is a native of the city of Ferguson. She was born and raised here. I believe that North County has a great future. I believe that with the right kinds of individuals working together, we can make this into the kind of place that we want people to live and grow and raise their families. My academic career has been focusing on urban research, urban development. My professional practical experience has been serving as the mayor of the city of Hazelwood while I was a faculty member at Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville. I really believe that if we take the time to listen, I believe that if we take the time to learn, I believe that we will be able to develop appropriate strategies to address the broader issues that are faced by the greater St. Louis region. It's my hope that we could use evidence-based research to be able to develop these strategies. It would be my goal that we'd be able to identify truths that we could speak to our residents, truths that we could speak to our institutions of government. One goal that I have is that we would be able to build confidence and trust in the institutions of government, both by the public and that the institutions of government would have confidence and faith in the public as well. I believe that the work of the Commission really provides us in the greater St. Louis region to address the issues that we face. And since our Commission really does represent a diversity of opinions and a diversity of backgrounds, it's my hope, it's my belief that we will be able to effectively develop strategies that we can report out during the spring and by September.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Becky James Hatter, and I'm the President and CEO of Big Brothers Big Sisters of Eastern Missouri. I have 25 years experience with Big Brothers and Big Sisters. I'm also a former high school teacher. And of those 25 years, 20 have been here in the St. Louis metropolitan area. I have I think, a unique vantage point because we work with almost 2,500 children annually. We know them personally. We go into the homes of every family and know every parent. And we're blessed to have citizens all across this region wanting to build a friendship with a child, be there for them, to help them through, life's ups and downs. So I have this vantage point of seeing families that are struggling, really struggling, and I also see how resilient and hopeful and determined they are. And as I said, we've got thousands of citizens, maybe some of you that are in the room, that have stepped up to help a child. And I also blessed to see our region's police force as big brothers and big sisters and answer our calls at 3 o'clock in the morning when something is going wrong with our families, when they need some support. So I'm blessed and a bit burdened to sit at this unique vantage point. I wanted to be here because I just know we can do this together. I've seen it every day. People that not known each other, never met each other, get to know each other. And I just hope that as we're making decisions and recommendations for institutional change, which I'm sure there are places where it needs to happen, I just hope we don't forget the person, the people, the individual relationships, the lives that need to be changed for the better. And I am honored and humbled, and please hold us, and certainly particularly me, to the very highest standards. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Rose Windmiller. In my professional life, I've worked at Washington University for 26 years. So I have the perspective of both higher education and the work that I do there in public policy. So I hope that will benefit both the commission and the community, because when we do come up with solutions for issues related to disparity in education, in healthcare, and all the other issues that we're going to deal with, I pledge to be front and center with elected officials trying to drive these policies home. I think that's really important, but I will tell you a little bit about me personally. I grew up in North County. My 92-year-old father still lives there. I spent a lot of time in North County. He's a wonderful man. I've never had the opportunity to do this in front of a microphone, so I'm going to say hi, Dad. But I also just want to tell you that two words that I grew up with that really sort of embody who I am have to do with safety and community. I felt safe in my family. I felt safe in my neighborhood. I certainly felt safe in my school. And those things are absolutely vital for all of us. We can't have freedom without safety. And we can't really fulfill who we are as individuals and as a community unless we feel safe and free in our areas. So really, I took it upon myself when I was asked to do this, to try to bring those two words, to keep them in the back of my mind at all times when I hear from people. I know we're going to hear from a lot of experts, but I also expect and hope that we hear from the community, the residents of North County, the residents of St. Louis in general, so that you can help us really develop an agenda that we can drive home and make a permanent solution to some of the issues that we're dealing with. I'm really honored to serve. Thank you very much.
My name is Pat Sly. I'm Executive Vice President of Emerson, which is right down the street. We're a global industrial corporation that's been in Ferguson for almost 75 years. That's our home. That's where I spend most of my time. My primary reasons for wanting to be part of the solution here are two. One is personal. I happen to be on several nonprofit boards that serve the underserved, both national and regional boards, primarily focused on underserved education and human services. I've learned a lot from that experience. Secondly, I'm here for professional reasons, representing Emerson in our community in Ferguson. I, as well as some of my colleagues, put together a multi-million-dollar program to assist the people of Ferguson after the events of August. And during that due diligence, I got to learn a lot about who to help and why. And I'm here to hopefully have a candid discussion on what the resolution is and hope to move this panel forward, this commission forward, with your help. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Felicia Pulliam, and I'm delighted to be here. I am a community servant, and I can't think of a better way to spend my time or talent than to work with this wise and wonderful body of people that care about our community. I'm a North County girl. I grew up here. And I value the resources and the wonderful way that I grew up. I wasn't aware of these invisible boundaries that separate the community. And so from my childhood, my understanding of my neighborhood was from the city limits to 270, because that's where we were, and had an opportunity to live and play in all of those spaces. And so I consider all of North County my community and my home. I value it. I'm here hoping to restore neighborhood support systems that nurture individuals and families, that give them the opportunities that they deserve and the opportunities that we need them to take advantage of to move our region forward. Each and every person plays a critical role in our success, and I think we all have a responsibility to assist them to do the best they can on behalf of the broader good. We need a cultural change in this community. We're all aware of it. The scab has been pulled off of this wound numerous times, and we find ourselves in a place where we put a Band-Aid on it. I think it's time that we find an antibiotic for the issues, the separateness, and agitation in our community, so we can all move forward together. It's important for the culture of the community. It's important for our economics. When you look at the regional priorities that we have, entrepreneurialism, retention of high potential, and lessening the brain drain, we can't do any of those things and attract anyone to be here with us on that journey if we don't respect the rights of each and every person in our community and bring them along. So I'm happy to be here.
Thank you.
My name is Dan Isom. I spent my
entire life in St. Louis. I grew up in North St. Louis. I'm 47 years old, but 25 of those years have been spent in law enforcement. One thing I've asked myself, being an African American, living in St. Louis, and being a police officer for so long, is why do some people love the police and why do some people hate the police? There are communities that you go in St. Louis that simply love the police. There are other communities that want you only when they need help or only when they're in a crisis. And that's always been a perplexing question to me, because what's the reason for that? Is it the cops or is it the people in the community? And so from that perspective, there's always been a tension or a tear in my position as a police officer, but me as an African American in St. Louis. In addition to that, I've been blessed with the opportunity to have a great education, to have a great family, to live in a great community. And so it's exposed myself to a broader world that many people don't have. And what I found in St. Louis is that there are great people on all sides. And there are a lot of good people who want to do a lot of good things in St. Louis. But for many years, there has been things that we just don't say in public. We only speak to these things in private, to people who we know and to who we're comfortable with. And so to speak, we're just preaching to the choir. And so in that respect, there's also been a personal tension, because there are these things that you want to say, you want to get out, but they're not mentioned in public. And so I think right now, because everybody's listening and everybody has gotten the message, that there's an opportunity to say what you feel right now. And hopefully, that's a great opportunity for us to move towards something of substance. And so that's why I'm here today.
Rebecca, I'm a closeted writer, so if it's okay, I'd like to share what I wrote.
Yes, that's fine.
For all of you. Good afternoon to everyone. I first want to express my heaviness of heart for all that has transpired to bring us together today. And I want to be extremely honest and transparent with everyone on the commission and in the community that I feel the burden of accountability and responsibility that comes with this position that we are charged to do together. And although too many in our community have experienced generational, physical, emotional, and psychological trauma and tragedy, I am here, as we all are, because Ferguson specifically and the St. Louis region implicitly is full of treasures. I worship in a treasure in Jennings. I play with kids everywhere. I petition the businesses here in the community. I'm from St. Louis County. And one thing I know about us is that we are a resilient people that triumph in the face of adversity. So I asked myself the question, as Rebecca did, why am I here? And what am I going to do in this defining moment? And this is what I came up with to share with you. My hope of the work that we will do together is to continue to pray together, to ask for courage and divine guidance to identify workable and sustainable solutions, because we don't have a lot of time. I want to address root causes of our current state. I want to lean into the discomfort of inconvenient truths. As we listen, let's fight normal human reaction of posturing and defensiveness. I want to advocate for the inclusion of all voices into this process. I want us to speak truth. I want to acknowledge the truth. I want to accept the truth and love. That's what I was taught to do. And here's my truth. There is a system, there are policies, there are governance structures that favor some to the disfavor of many. Race matters, and where you live matters. These two factors are major determinants for the life that is set before us in this region and beyond. I ask that our definition of health is more in this conversation than absence of physical disease. My truth is that health is well-being of mind, of body, and spirit that thrive in safe and life-affirming surroundings. I'd love to merge research and data with the lived experience of people in order to gain a 360 perspective of what's happening. And I want to share a quote in closing because it gave me hope. And I'm a social worker and a preacher's kid. And so what we do is we share a little bit of hope. My quote comes from Ernest Hemingway. It says, "Everyone is broken by life, but afterward, many are strong in the broken places." So I look forward to working with each of you and all who are invested in creating positive change to begin the healing process in the broken places. Thank you for letting me share my heart today.
My name is Kevin Albrand. I'm a police officer for the city of St. Louis. I grew up in North County and went to high school very close to here. I've been a police officer for 31 years. One thing that I think is wrong that I just learned, I'm older than Chief Isom, but he's retired now and I'm still working, so I don't know how that works. Hey, cops can be a cynical bunch, and we tend to be not share our thoughts and our feelings outside of our society, but I think this is a great opportunity for the commission and for the public to hear from law enforcement. Hopefully I can explain to you why there are things that we do, why there are some things that we can't do. I look forward to very frank discussion, which will be difficult at times, but this needs to be done, and we look forward to making the necessary changes to make this community safer.
Thank you.
My name is Gabriel Gore. A little bit of background about me is I'm an attorney. I was an assistant U.S. attorney here in the Eastern District of Missouri for 5 years. I've been in private practice for probably 15 years now. My interest in being on the committee, the commission, and serving in its capacity is to see if we can't be a part of starting the process of breaking down the divisions that have existed in our community for a long time. I think given my background, the way I grew up, coming out of a disadvantaged community and able through education to move into a profession and become successful, and all that whole time I've always stayed engaged in working in the community and particularly focused on working with urban youth and trying to create opportunities for urban youth through education and mentoring. These divisions that have been exposed by the Michael Brown tragedy are something that I see every day, probably because of the uniqueness of my background and where I am and the type of work I do. I mean, these things are always apparent to me, and they're always eating at me and frustrating to me. And it appears that the Michael Brown situation have kind of brought these things to the forefront to where, as an entire community, we're focused on these things. And so I see this as a great opportunity to get to work on these issues and start addressing them because they're not going anywhere. And I think what people are starting to recognize is that these are things, these divisions hold back our entire community. They hold back the people who are experiencing the powers of the sense of powerlessness and the lack of opportunity. It holds them back. But it also holds back the entire region. I mean, the amount of squandered potential that I witness when I work in our urban communities with young children and knowing that they're not going to have the opportunities to succeed in our society, these are things that are a problem. They're a problem economically, they're a problem socially, they're just basic issues of fairness. And we have an opportunity to start the process of working on those in an open and honest way. And I am very honored to be part of this commission and have that opportunity.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Tracy Blackman. I choose to spend my time working in two vocations that are very dear to me. I am a registered nurse, and I am a coordinator for faith outreach at BJC Healthcare. I am also the pastor of Christ the King United Church of Christ in Florissant. I am not a native to St. Louis, so it doesn't matter what high school I went to. But I am from Birmingham, Alabama, and I'm a child of the 60s. So the issues that I see that have arisen in the aftermath of the killing of Michael Brown Jr. are issues that I have been living with my entire life. I am here because it's personal. I'm here because I have 2 black sons. I'm here because I have a black daughter. I'm here because I listen well, and because I have members in my congregation who live in Ferguson, but I also realize that Ferguson is everywhere. I'm here not because I can be everyone's voice. I have to use my own voice, and I don't believe in voiceless people, but I'm here because I'm committed to holding space for your voices to be heard, the voices of my fellow commissioners and the voices of the community. And I'm here because I'm willing to be held accountable for my voice and for my commitment to change. I thought long and hard before applying to be on this commission. I was afraid because of all the tension in the community that signing up to be on the commission would lessen my impact in the community. And I had to make a decision. My decision is because I do believe that it's better to be at the table, that seeking change, than to be outside of the table. And so I feel that I had a commitment and I had a strong desire to be at this table. I'm incredibly encouraged by the 15 people that sit at this table. And I don't know them all well. I look forward to it. And I look forward to sitting in the discomfort that comes when we have real conversation about race. Race, which I think is the basis of our economic disparities, race that I think is the basis of our educational inequity, race that I think is the basis of our health disparities, real conversations that are going to be difficult, but that we must have. I only mention that I come from Birmingham, Alabama, because a long time ago in Birmingham, we had these same conversations facing the same issues. And here we are again, because we rush too quickly to healing. We rush too quickly to Band-Aids. And I'm committed to sitting in the discomfort until real change comes. So thank you for the opportunity to serve. And I take it seriously, as well as I know every other commissioner on this table does. It's an honor and it's a privilege, and my commitment is to continue to listen, continue to hear, so that every voice can be represented.
Thank you.
As I've listened to each of my fellow commissioners, and as Starsky and I have talked over the last week and a half or so, I have to tell you I am incredibly touched to the depths of my heart by the levels of commitment and passion and intensity that I hear. I'm glad you got a chance to hear around this table what we've heard a bit as we've just begun to get to know each other. people come to this work and come to this journey because they care deeply to the depths of their soul about this region, about the issues that are on the table here. And they care deeply about approaching them differently. And I think that is our challenge as a region. It's why we come to a commission that is pledged to be independent, to be transparent, to be responsive to all of our region and to all of our community. The phrase that Tracy used, that Ferguson is everywhere. And that is true. And it is evident in a myriad of issues that we're going to need to tackle, and you're going to help us prioritize them. So I come to this work because I care deeply about this region as well. I care deeply that every life matters, that every child's education matters, that economic opportunity for every citizen matters, and that everyone has in them an incredible potential that God gave them. And I think it's our responsibility to find ways for that potential to be realized and to remove the barriers that stop that potential from being realized. I've been blessed in my life to have opportunities in public policy, to have an education that has given me the skills and the knowledge to participate in that arena at the state level, and also to participate in business leadership. And because I've been given those opportunities, I believe it is my responsibility to find ways to partner with this commission and with others in our community who care deeply about remedying these problems in a way that we never have before. These are long-term issues, and they're not going to be solved by September, and they're not going to be solved in near years. But many of them can be addressed, and we can begin down this road, and we can take these steps. My family is committed to St. Louis. We've lived here for 20 years. My children and their spouses are very committed to the city and to the region and to working in spaces that mean so much to them about improving our region. And I have a grandson, and I'll have other grandchildren. And because I want them to have a region that is stronger and is fairer and is a much better place to live than we can even dream about today. That's why I come to this work, because Scripture tells us much, to those to whom much has been given, much is required, and that is our call.
It will be enough to accept the call to serve on this commission because you get to serve with the folks who just spoke, and I'm honored to do so. I come to this work, though, several levels. I answered the call to get to the question. First, for professional reasons. I serve and lead a foundation that is a ministry of the United Church of Christ that is focused on making child well-being a civic priority in the St. Louis region. I listen and I know that scholars, including Dr. Asher Ben-Aria of the Hebrew University in Jerusalem, a global expert on child well-being, when they assess child well-being and you ask children, there are three leading indicators. Number one, how safe do you feel in your own neighborhood? Number two, what is your view of the local police? And number three, how often do you see children being hit at your school? This is the work of a region that seeks to prioritize child well-being to make sure first, as Rose says, that they're safe. I come to this work pastorally. I am the pastor of St. John's United Church of Christ, a church in North St. Louis City, in an economically challenged, low-income, predominantly African-American neighborhood. And there, one of the first things I had to do when I became the pastor 6 years ago was add to the Sunday school curriculum in the teenage class the work of Kevin Powell, the Black Male Handbook. Because reading the context in which those young people were growing up, it wasn't enough to teach them about the Jesus of the Bible, but they had to learn, as Kevin Powell teaches in that book, what to do when you get pulled over by the police. Because they would. come to this work pastorally because I believe in the radical revolutionary politics of Jesus the Christ, who was a marginalized kid from the wrong side of the tracks who hung out with a youth group that were called the 12 Disciples, and they decided to turn the whole world upside down. I come to this work pastorally because I believe the words of my friend John Jackson, who leads the Schott Foundation for Public Education in Boston, those words spoken in this time frame of the last 113 days in the pulpit of our church, that our systems suffer from institutionalized lovelessness. And so this love of Christ that we could share one with another, and love that should be manifest through the systems of public governance, is absent. And so we must reform policies in order to put the love back in a community and a society so that we may care for one another. And finally, I come to this work personally, and personally because it is a progressive call. It is a call from the voices of young people who shot me an email with 24 hours notice because they had planned in 2 weeks a freedom ride to St. Louis over Labor Day weekend. And the place that they were to meet for 3 days as they organized actions and as they taught one another about civil rights and about community organizing and about grassroots work and about inclusive democracy, told them that they couldn't come there anymore. So our church had to answer that call, and I understood it as a call. That freedom ride connected to the location where I went to school, where the Freedom Riders from years before stayed in the dormitory where I got my first vestiges of higher education. I understand it as a progressive personal call because when I missed a flight so I couldn't get to my uncle's funeral a few weeks ago, the first thing I got was an email on my laptop and told me 14 protesters had been arrested in Ferguson while standing on the sidewalk because of a noise ordinance that would have gotten me a $200 fine, and it got them $2,700 bail. And I spent the rest of that day with an ecumenical and interfaith group of clergy trying to get them out of jail in St. Anne Police Department. And they became parishioners of sorts to us clergy. So that Ferguson turned out to be 13. Were part of the call. And finally, I come to this work personally because of the progressive call of my sons. A 9-year-old who told me that every time he hears about Michael Brown, his stomach starts to hurt. He does not know that that is a manifestation of trauma that he has gone through and our entire community has gone through. And that same 9-year-old who asked the questions of me just a couple of weeks, actually not even a full week ago, Daddy, why didn't the president do something? Are all the people now going to rise up like they did with Martin Luther King? So began a conversation on the democratic process in America with my 9-year-old, a civics class in our sitting room, and a corrective historical course that everybody didn't rise up before. They haven't yet this time. And that's why Daddy does what he does.
So, commissioners, you all have spoken from your hearts as well as your heads. I'd like to take a moment to give it back to you because I know you heard each other. But we get to let it seep into our bones a little bit deeper. I asked you why you served, why you felt called and compelled. You all represent a wide swath of people with various backgrounds and various formative experiences. You approach this task, some skeptical, others hopeful too, but with a clear sense of purpose. A purpose to ensure that youth insight, understanding, issues, and concerns are present in this process. A call to make sure that youth are no longer targets, but are recognized as community assets. A recognition that this is our home. This is our place and that our geography should not determine our outcomes, though quite often it does. A sense that we must value all of our children and be accountable to them, to their parents, and to each other. A sense that we are neighbors in this thing, that the sense of other and us is no longer appropriate for the work that we have to do. We are neighbors. You see this as an extension of your work. Many of you in your respective professions, from superintendents to police officers, from business people to foundation heads. But all of you recognize that there are long-standing issues that need a fresh perspective and your totalizing commitment, and it requires that we make the room to listen and to learn for the next 10 months. North County is a great place for us to live, grow, and raise our families, and we have to make it so for all of our families. As a part of our process, we have to invite evidence-based research into the process, and yet we also have to speak truth, the truth that speaks to our lived experience, our empirical research of such that is lived inside of us. That part of your work is to build confidence and trust between the community and the institutions of government, that you want to bring us together around mentoring and developing our children, that we need policy solutions and not just programmatic ones. So part of our work is to do the heavy lifting upstream to change the context that shape and form our choices. You want to advance safety and community for the purpose of promoting freedom, because in fact that is what is at stake. You represent so many, and part of your work is to restore neighborhood support systems that nurture individuals and that nurture families, and to advance cultural change that replaces Band-Aid interventions with the antibiotics of healing solutions, real healing. This is an opportunity for us to say what we feel in spaces where we normally wouldn't, when we are politely not discussing what needs to be discussed. And in this space, we will, with great fearlessness and temerity, lean in, talk and listen and share. We will advocate for the inclusion of all voices into the process. We'll merge research and data with the lived experience. We'll make sure that we hear from law enforcement, that we address the tensions between why folks love and why folks hate law enforcement by making space at the table for those who are called to protect and serve on a daily basis. And we'll start the process of breaking down the divisions that disable our community and traumatize many of our residents. Why? Because we are the residents, and this is personal. So, Ferguson is everywhere, and it begins with us here today. We're prepared to sit in the discomfort that comes with having real conversations about race until change comes, and we recognize and affirm as a part of our work that every life matters, and it is our great work to create communities and systems that cultivate our individual and collective potential. This is why you're here. What I'd like to hear from you next is about your aspirations. What is it that you hope this commission will accomplish? What is the highest that you can dream for us, recognizing that there are pitfalls along the way, that there are deeply entrenched divisions, and there are cultural norms that would have us be quiet. So we know there are pitfalls. But what do you hope we will be able to accomplish as an invitation for us actually doing so? Anyone may begin.
I guess as I listen to the commissioners share their thoughts and insights, I was really impressed as you observed that this really is personal for those of us that are members of the commission. As I've thought about the commission and serving on it, it's easy to be cynical and say, well, one commission will simply issue a report that sits on a shelf. It's easy to say, I'll rely on conventional wisdom and do what I've always been doing and be condemned to repeat the errors of the past. I can do nothing and pretend that the issues we face are not real. Or we can seek solutions for the long term. As I listen to the members of the commission, I begin to realize that for me, this is not just a professional effort. This is personal. It involves family. So my wife and I were discussing the report that had been provided to us by the staff, looking at the analysis and response to urban civil disorder in the past. We began to realize we have lived through this in the past. I believe my aspirations for the council is that we would be able to speak truth to power. It's a text that we had used years and years ago in one of my classes. That we could identify truth and speak it to power, because power is exercised by the institutions of government, and power is exercised by the media, power is exercised by the public and the demonstrators, power is exercised by individuals who choose to do nothing. As I listen to the pastoral staff that's on the commission, I'm reminded of the letter that the Apostle Paul wrote to Philemon, a runaway slave, and he was being returned, and Paul said, I know he stole from you, but if you did, put it on my account and I will pay you back. Now, Paul was in prison at the time. He had no money. He had no resources. He could never pay him back. But it's that concept of family, of brotherhood. And I believe that looking at the membership of this commission, looking at the cross-section that we can have, that our goal is to be able to strive to identify that, in many respects, we are brothers and sisters. And we need to share one another's burdens. My desire for the commission is that we would exercise wisdom, that we would exercise courage, and they would exercise honesty in our debates with one another and with the findings that we choose to share. That's my goal, that we'd be able to identify truth, that we'd be able to disseminate that truth, and we could move this region forward. We can't look back. We can look to the future and make this region a greater place in which to live. Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, thank you very much. Certainly, if you come back to another meeting, as soon as the dates are announced, I'm the one that will tear up every time you ask me a very personal question about any child in this region. So, but on this one, I won't tear up. My hope is that fair minds will get to talk, and I think you heard from my colleagues that I think that's where we are. I hope also that we together will answer the question clearly, measurably. What kind of community do we want? I've heard, and I completely understand the people that are wondering about this commission and this report, and will it get put on a table? I think that's a very fair question. I've been the CEO of a nonprofit. I've been a part of strategic planning processes, and I can't tell you how many plans I've seen be put on a shelf. I think that's accurate. But my hope is, and what I believe is, this one will not. And for lack of a better word, I hope we design a community scorecard. I mean, we really need to know where we are right now. I mean, what is point A? What are the things that are not right? And what are the things we're going to change measurably so that we can all see it in a very transparent manner? I hope we have that conversation. And I might be alone in this, but I surely hope the media stays with it, because I hope this scorecard remains very public and holds us all accountable to building this better region. I really believe in win-wins. I really believe in owning my part of the problem. And I think with facts and researches and fair minds and the reports, we can get there. And then the last thing that I would say, I hope if it's not this entire commission, maybe it's all of you, but I hope we commit to a minimum of 20 years on this. I hope that we don't walk away from here on September the 15th and things have quieted down and we go back to where we were. I hope we all just stick with it, because we've got a very long haul and relationships are hard to build, but I know they're the only things that really matter at the end of the day. So I am just honored to be here and to work really hard at this. Thank you.
I guess what I'm looking for is, I guess the high aspirations for the, excuse me, the commission would be the question I've been asking since these events unfolded. And that is, why, as the city of Ferguson was developing and growing, actually have some pretty positive results and returns in certain segments, that there was a large segment of the population that was not being addressed, that was not being heard. And this seems to be a situation that occurs over and over again. So if we can answer that question and get communities out in front of that, instead of always being behind it, why was this being ignored? Was it political, economical, financial restraints? I don't know. But this is something, I guess, the high aspirations of the commission. If we can answer that question, we have gone a long, long way.
If I can just be brief, most of you have heard the expression from Rodney King, can't we all just get along? I would simplify that and say, can't we all just talk? And more importantly, can't we all just listen? We can come to a common resolution here. We can come to a consensus, I believe, with this commission on identifying the underlying issues and making the proper recommendations to the governor, to the state of Missouri, to move ahead with very concrete actions.
What I want to see us accomplish as a commission, it is my hope that the report that is due on September 15th will not be our goal, but will be a vehicle that we use for change. It is my hope that we will produce deliverables that will be acted upon long before September 15th. It is my hope that those deliverables will begin to restore confidence in our institutions and confidence in our communities. It is my hope that those recommendations will not be about giving people fish or even teaching them how to fish, but it will begin to be about shared ownership of the ponds. It is my hope that those recommendations will move us from us against them to we against it. The it being the systems that have been institutionalized that really make everybody a victim. It is my hope that we as a commission will begin to not only address racism, but to address privilege. And not just privilege in race, but privilege in education, privilege in economics, privilege in gender, all the things that create us against them in our society. It is our hope, and I have every belief and every confidence in this commission, that the report is not our goal. The report is the vehicle that we're going to use to make changes in this community.
I have a lot of hope. I hope I will never again see the many things over these past 3 months that have stung my eyes and bruised my heart. As human beings, we can't have another child And Mike Brown was a big boy, but he was a boy. And if you understand adolescent brain development, if you understand the journey of human beings, and you recognize he was a kid, that was a kid, disregarded, and worse than that, some authority to separate him from his mother, and a decision from an authoritative body to militarize against a grieving community with no accountability, with no understanding. It's painful. I hope that through this work, we will finally have people, because it's been so horrible, it's been so traumatizing, that people will recognize, yes, there are institutions, systems that are designed to oppress and separate people. What a grave loss it is for us. And I hope that we can identify those things and that people will work together to make sure that this doesn't continue to happen. I just can't imagine that this could happen again and that we will survive as a community. That's how tragic and terrible I think it's been. I hope that the cultural change that we're looking for will come through the research and recommendations, the commitment of this body to get this very good work done. In St. Louis, I have watched systemic dismantling of African American communities time and time again. And black folks always have to start over. We're always at the beginning, always at the beginning. And so when people say, why are the communities so disorganized? What's wrong with the institutions? When we look with clarity at what has happened over generations, that we will identify how we stop that so that everyone in the community can make progress, because it's clear that we're not going anywhere if we don't get there together.
I have three hopes. The first hope is to honor all of the voices in our community. Second is to improve relations between all races, ethnic, and social-economic backgrounds. And third, my hope is to address this systemic inequality in our city.
I won't repeat, but all the hopes that have been said are definitely shared by me. I'm a big believer in mechanisms of sustainability. So as we think about the recommendations of policy, even if you do best practices across the nation, there's a localizing that needs to happen to make them real for our community. So my hope is that we move beyond the recommendation into how would implementation possibly look, and that's done in an inclusive manner. My hope is that this isn't about 16 people, but it's about thousands of people, that there's a movement that is gaining momentum and sustained. And ultimately, my legacy is my 10-year-old niece. My hope is that she doesn't need to look outside of St. Louis for everything in her future, the way that we're planning right now.
My hope is that this commission and our recommendations and our work is the start of a process of breaking down the divisions that we see. I think anyone who is looking to the commission and saying, you 16 people are going to solve all of these problems outlined in the governor's executive order, let me cut to the end and just tell you, that's not going to happen. It's going to take an entire community, and I think we have been given an opportunity to start that process and given a lot of authority to do that, and that's what we intend to do. But at the end of the day, it's going to come down to the entire community getting involved and working on these issues, and it's going to be a long process.
So I'll jump in here. So I'm learning a lot about folks here. So actually, one of my hopes before the end of this is to go to Pastor T.R. Carr's church, because nobody but preachers quote Philemon. Most folks can't find it. And to have a beer with Kevin, because I'm getting to know him more, and see just great work that he's doing on the ground. But I say that to say, I really do hope we get to know one another. And that's because I'm learning more about remarkable people and even the people I knew, I'm learning stuff I didn't know. And because I think part of the work of the commission, quite frankly, is to model the kind of community change we actually want to see. So there are, policy implications and policy recommendations that we need to have that are practical, but we also need to be able to show and see and connect with one another so that we can actually get hard stuff done together. And that's part of the work of the commission as well. It's one of my hopes that we can engage in early and intermediate actions. So before there's a report in September 15th, we should be able to check off the list of low-hanging fruit and some of these issues that people are already talking about, some recommendations that have already been made in reforms, some reports that are already out there that we know we can put into place, and recommendations soon. So it is my hope that we act in that manner, that we are an action tank, not just a think tank, that we're moving things, not just making recommendations at the end. My hope is that the recommendations we make from a policy perspective are specific, and that they are targeted, that we are able to identify both who can take the actions and the capacity to act and show a way forward. And finally, to my colleague Bethany's note about sustainability, it is my hope that the grassroots energy and widespread attention that is now engaged can be mobilized to sustain and assure actionable recommendations that have been informed by the community. That's a lot in one sentence, but that is to say, we have not seen, and I continue to say this is a historic moment, we have not seen the kind of grassroots energy and organizing we've seen in this community, in this region. I don't know if we've ever seen it in this region. But my prayer is that it be sustained and strengthened, because that is the only sustainable way to hold us accountable, to hold communities accountable, to hold policymakers accountable, to making sure there's the kind of implementation that will get us closer to racial, ethnic equity in these various areas for the next generation. So those are my hopes for the work, and if we do those things, I believe that will make this day different.
You have Brittany and Rasheen? Can we hear from them?
Unique about this commission and the people on the commission is we all came together at a very difficult time here in St. Louis. What's real unique about it is that, me being a protester, I'll be working and figuring out ways to change the city, standing and working the sides of former police officers and current police officers. In our time right now, we understand the trust and the way that the police and the way that a certain community feels with each other or towards each other is not great. So hopefully me and the former police officer will be able to come together and be able to figure out issues and solutions and different things that we can come up with to make St. Louis a better place and to make St. Louis a place that we once known and once used to love and live, and not have to worry about all the protests and worry about all the organizing, but come up with real solutions, come up with real change, so we can continue to grow with each other, continue to work with each other, and continue not to have the same old, same old. So I'm excited about this commission because it's so broad, it's so diverse, it's so many different people from different occupations and ages and religions that's going to be working and coming up with real solutions. It's going to be tough. It's not going to be easy because we are coming from different backgrounds, different part of life, but we all understand at the end of the day, if we really want to make St. Louis the place we need to, the place that we want to love, the place that we all remember, the great St. Louis, that we all have to come together as one and work together and to come up with real solutions and hard change to make St. Louis the place that we used to remember it was. Like I said, it's going to be tough, but this is a great group of folks from different backgrounds, and we really want to create some change here because we don't want our city to continue to head down the same path that it is heading. We want to create the systematic change that is needed in our city.
For over 100 days now, we have been in the midst of something none of us could have ever imagined. When I moved home 2 years ago, I was excited to be on a journey of justice in a city that I care so deeply about, and yet never could I have imagined that we would end up where we are right now. And so the diverse collection of people that we brought together, some of them I know, some of you I have just met for the first time, but I'm excited about the possibilities of what we can do together. And I think that what truly makes the commission unique is that we've got a collection of unafraid people, and we've got a collection of independent people. And so making sure that we are doing work that is independent of any government body but is truly accountable to the people, that we are listening to the needs and solutions of the community, that we are ensuring that the community's voice is number one and valued, and that we answer to you, is why I'm a part of this and what I think makes this unique. And also that we have people here that are just truly bold leaders. So many of the people here I have been able to work with and trust in urban education, and they value our children in the same way that I do. We have aligned values and share the same vision of justice and equity for this region. And when you have a collection of people like that, I think you really can make anything happen. And so I'm looking forward to the work that we have to do, because we were unafraid to bring people from all sides of this issue together, those of us that have been out in the streets and suffered some of the worst of this situation, and those of us that have been working behind the scenes in all different arenas. And so I think that we've got a unique combination of people with a unique drive and vision for equity and justice that's shared among us. Because of what the task calls for. We are called to hold ourselves and one another to the highest level of accountability, because our very lives and the freedoms and ideals we espouse are at stake here. And so I believe in accountability, and I think that that is what we are after. That is what we have to be after if we are to be more than window dressing. So we have important work ahead of us, and I'm looking forward to getting on that journey with you.
It's very difficult to add to what's already been said, because personally I agree with all of it. But if there's a hope that I have, is that this is the Ferguson Commission, but I hope that it becomes the Community Commission. So much of what we're talking about is reliant upon us starting the process of people understanding that we're all in this together. That if we're going to deal with things like education, poverty, policy, the legal system, the courts, that's not simply a Ferguson issue. South St. Louis has to have a stake in it. North St. Louis has to have a stake in it. West County must have a stake in it.